The last section here, solving equations for specific variables, is unlike anything else in all of this. There is a question that has a little bit of factoring in it, which is why we've included it under this factoring unit. But the idea is most of this unit is just factoring trinomials and then solving by factoring trinomials, and mixed in that is when you factor trinomials when there's composition of functions. So instead of just factoring x squared plus 2x plus 3, we're going to factor 2x minus 1 squared plus 2 times 2x minus 1 plus 3. Those look very much the same, other than instead of an x, there's a 2x minus 1. So that's the majority of the unit. This last part is unrelated to any of that. So sometimes we need to isolate one variable to solve for it when there are other variables around it. What we are trying to do is undo whatever is currently being done. So when we do this stuff, I don't know, there's no brackets. Okay, so BEDMAS backwards, but we don't need to do any bracket stuff. So BEDMAS, B-E-D-M-A-S, but we don't have the B. This is the order, we're moving left to right, that we need to do things. We need to do any addition or subtraction first, then any multiplication, and then any exponents. Typically, all of these will fall under that. So, what is that? Sam Deb. Okay, so I'm just going to write this Sam Deb, but I'm going to forget the B. I'm going to put these things. All right, so I need to isolate for V. Right now, V in A is being times by M. So you do the opposite of times, which is divide. So I divide by M, divide by M. There's my equal sign here. So then I have V equals P over M. And that's it. V is alone. So these first A, B, C, D, and then I think the first couple in the next section are relatively straightforward. Okay, now we need to get V alone for B. Now V is on the denominator. And one of the very first things you learn is that you have to get, whenever you get a letter alone, it needs to be on the numerator and it needs to be by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is times both sides by V, and that's going to get rid of it on the bottom. So on the left, you've got VW equals M times A times D. So there's V, it's being times by W. So in order to get the V alone, I'm going to divide by W. W over W will cancel out. So W will be on the bottom. And so I've got V equals M times A times D all over W. And now V is alone. So in the very first question here, we just had to divide the M over and we were done. Here, we had to times by V to get it up on the numerator, which was on the other side, and then we could divide by W. So this actually, in order to get V alone, we had a division, divide by W. In this one, divide by M. So we had, both of these had divisions to get V alone in this step. However, the very first step of this one was to bring the V up top into the numerators. Those are the differences between the first two. Here, we need to get V alone, and right now there's something being added to it. So it's relatively straightforward. We'll just subtract it. You can subtract this all at once. The A times the T, because this is a term. So you just subtract that term. AT minus 8T are gone. So we've got, on this side, we got V, we got equals, we've got S minus AT. And so V is now alone. So that C is unlike anything else because we've had to subtract something. There was no division. All right. So with this one, I see a fraction of 1 over 2. So I'm just going to times by 2. 2 times a half, 2 times a half, or doubling a half is just 1. So that cancels with that. So times this by 2. So I have 2e equals mv squared. So that was there was no adding or subtracting in SAMDEB. We did get rid of a times by dividing, but there's also another times here, v squared times m. So we have to get rid of the multiplying by doing some sort of division here. So we're going to divide by m. So now I've got 2e over m equals v squared. And now the last thing is exponents. To get rid of a squared, you go into square root. And whenever you are solving, you're going to need, and the square root, to get rid of a squared, you're going to get a plus or minus. 2e over m equals v. So that was definitely the most complex one we've done. First thing I did was times by 2. 2 times a half will cancel. Then I can divide by m to get rid of the m. Then I can square root to get rid of the squared. So there's 3 steps there. Example 2 here now says solve for the letter m. So I'll do e and f, and then I will do the next video for the other ones. To get m alone, there's been a times here. So I will divide. Whoops, there we go. It's timesing by c squared, so I just need to divide by c squared. I'm not trying to get rid of the squared because I'm looking for m. There is no m squared. There is no squared on the m. It's only with the c. So I'll divide both sides by c squared. So that's gone. So I have e over c squared is equal to m. And that's all there is to it. Here, now there is a squared with the m. So I will have to square root. But backwards BEDMAS says you have to do that last. E is at the end. I need to get rid of any addition, subtraction. There are none. But I do have some multiplication. This is being, m squared is being multiplied by 3 r's and a p. So I need to get rid of that multiplication by dividing. I'll divide by 3 r's and a p. So divide by 3 r's, or r cubed and a p. Divide that on both sides, r3p. So then those are gone. And I got m squared equals g4 over r cubed p. Now I can get rid of the squared by square rooting both sides. So that's gone. And now the m is alone. So m equals plus or minus the square root of g4 over r cubed and p. So that's it. Those are all of the examples that I'm going to do in this video. I can put a star beside G and H because those are going to be quite complex, unlike any of the rest. So hopefully you can understand these 6 questions. There's definitely going to be some like this on the assessment. G and H, however, are a lot more complicated, so I probably only have 1 that are like those.